Well, we made it. We're making episode 0 of the CIA Asset Podcast. I don't know if that's really the name. This is how early in this
it's going to be a running bit.
It's a running bit. What is the name of this podcast?
Episode.
I'm just calling it podcast. You know what I should do? That's actually a good bit. Introduce the podcast as a new name every time.
Every week.
And so welcome to the
CIA.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Micah Prusak, and this is the producer, Tyler Postiglione.
Today I'm your guest host.
Yes.
And I'm in the interviewer chair.
Tyler's in the interviewer chair.
You wouldn't know this because it's the first eepisode.
It's episode
I'm
0.
actually in the interviewer chair and you're in the guest chair.
Yeah, maybe before we get into it, and maybe I can splice this in when I'm editing, the timeline of events is Tyler and I recorded episode 1 with Frank Meadows last week because Frank was in town and we had to get him.
Yeah.
And I was manic and just making this happen. And then we decided that we wanted to record an episode 0 afterwards to serve as like an introduction, because the point of this podcast is not comedy and it's not really entertainment.
No. Well,
I mean, I don't want to be anti-entertaining.
if entertainment, being entertaining is the way you communicate information very well.
Sure.
But we can get into that more. I have some thoughts about that, which we can get into more.
Yes, of course. But the purpose of this is, the purpose of episode 0 is to serve as an introduction to the podcast. And when I say introduction, I'm thinking of like an introduction that you might see in an academic book, where when I was in college and I was assigned a book to read, I would read the introduction, and then if there was like a concept that I disagreed with or didn't understand or needed more clarification on, I would find the body chapter in which it's referenced and skim that because, I wasn't that rigorous, I guess, unfortunately. And that was how I gleaned information. And so for this podcast, it's going to cover a wide range of topics, and every guest is going to bring their own unique expertise into, understanding the musical landscape and generating critical discourse on it. Yeah. But this episode is more to set expectations for the audience of what you and I are setting out to achieve in making this. Right. And also to almost serve as like a design document for me in making this and editing this, because I have no experience editing a podcast. I barely have video editing experience at all, and I haven't embarked on anything that is even tangentially academic in years. So I want to adhere to certain principles as I'm going through this. And I think literally having a conversation and then structuring an introductory episode around those principles is going to help guide this process for me more than jumping into the specifics. Because episode 1 with Frank is like, we're talking about things that Frank knows about, Frank Meadows, who's so knowledgeable. But I wanted to ask him about, the North Carolina scene and like, country music and indie and things of this nature. But that's all really specific, and it might speak to a certain moment or like certain actors within a scene, but it is not the overarching like intellectual goal for this. So that's what we're talking about today.
It's touching on elements.
Yes.
Frank's expertise addresses specific parts of
which
the larger
is interesting.
web of discussion that you want to get to.
Which is the point of doing this, right? It's like I want to dive deep and I want people to think critically about the art that's being made and who's making it and how it's being made and
the people also behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Exactly.
And I think this is part of it. Maybe this is a jumping off point, right? To like the first, you wrote a manifesto.
Yes. Let's start with the manifesto. I wrote a manifesto.
It's a 2-pronged manifesto, which I think is really interesting. And I think, to use Frank as an example, I think Frank is someone who speaks to both parts of the manifesto, but which I think applies to a lot of the guests that you have lined up in mind. And I think that's what's really interesting about it. But before we get into that, or to kind of preface that, why don't you explain to people what the 2 prongs of your manifesto are? Okay. The A section and the B section.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote a manifesto. I published like the first 2 paragraphs and maybe a little bit more. Maybe like first 3 paragraphs.
On Instagram.
Cropped on Instagram the other day. So this podcast has been birthed out of musical critical discourse that I was starting on my Instagram story. And I have personally felt as though that is not the best forum to have these discussions. It's interesting because I'm posting over the course of 24 hours and people are responding to me in real time, and I'm curating their responses and creating like a 30 slide long Instagram story that not everybody's going to see.
Right.
But people who are invested read through it.
Right.
And people have been sending in really thoughtful responses to borderline troll and inflammatory things that I post online. Like the last Instagram musical discourse that I started right before we filmed the Frank episode was I said that the most influential, it seems as though the most influential indie album of the past 10 years is Rocket by Alex G, because it was this super country Americana album before like everybody was doing that, right? And obviously Alex G is a bit of a chameleon, but he was an artist that he's broken through it in a large way. He's on a major label now. And obviously like I don't fully believe what I was saying. I just thought that was an interesting idea. And so I posted it as a way of generating inflammatory discussion and getting people to think, well, if it's not that, what is, or what are the most influential albums of the last 10 years in indie?
Right.
And people sent in a lot of thoughtful responses. What about this band? What about this band? Oh, that's interesting. This set of band came up in DIY, and it seems like bands that are coming up in the 2020s like were skyrocketed through all the steps by like the media landscape, and it was generating so much interesting discussion, and then it all disappeared after 24 hours on my Instagram story. Right. And I'm not gonna fucking post slides like on the grid, like summing up the discourse. I mean, I guess I could.
It's not as engaging.
No.
Yeah.
And so I said, and so that discussion, after many discussions of that nature, led to me saying, okay, I'm going to formalize this discourse. I'm going to try to generate interesting conversations beyond a single inflammatory. And when I say inflammatory, I know that might have a negative connotation. But
right. Well, it's you have to say something provocative, I think, to spark discussion.
To spark discussion.
And it's you have to say something controversial to create discourse in the sense that you have people who agree with you and disagree with you and are somewhere in between.
Yes.
If you were just saying stuff that everyone agreed to be true, it wouldn't actually be that interesting.
Then you're just doing what the current media landscape is doing, which is publishing press releases that are sent by press agents for bands or like media agencies.
Totally.
Right? It's like, this is like a whole other point, but maybe I'll make it briefly. It seems as though the media landscape is split in between legacy media and influencers at this point, right? And many influencers, and we'll get into the Noam Chomsky filters, in order to gain access and make their platforms relevant, play softball all the time. And they're basically just an ad platform that seems more organic.
Right.
Seems as though generally the media landscape is quite corrupt, especially when it comes to indie music. And I think it is such a naive position to think that those outlets and those platforms were somehow neutral arbiters or actually generating their own critical discourse.
Yeah.
I personally don't care much for that kind of access. I'm here to generate discussion.
Right.
That's the goal of this. I think that there is a moral imperative in today's media landscape to get people to think critically about the music that they consume.
Your manifesto, you split into two.
Yeah, I was going to get to the second part.
Yeah.
So wait, let me finish. There's, I think, a moral imperative. I think that we are being fed algorithmically generated tastes, essentially.
Right.
We were talking before we started filming about who this podcast is for. I think the critical discourse that I'm trying to generate is certainly for enthusiasts who have their own taste regardless and aren't just being fed algorithm whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's also crucially for music fans who love music and listen to music all the time, but don't have the time or the inclination necessarily to chase down the cutting edge of what people are doing, or maybe don't go to shows all the time or go to shows occasionally and aren't as tapped in. And so the way that they do hear about things would be through legacy media, through influencers, and through algorithms.
Right. And you want the podcast to be something that's kind of adjacent to that, but separate from those things.
Well,
as a way to engage with.
I want to help individuals, music fans, and music enthusiasts think harder about the things that they listen to. I want them to think about why they like the things that they like.
Yeah.
I want them to have an open mind to things that they previously haven't liked.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to articulate why, ideally. I think I want people to think about albums that have come out and the cultural legacy of those albums. I want people to be able to canonize art as it's being made. I want people to think about movements within artistic creation. I don't want people to consume passively. I think that is exactly what the stewards of the algorithm are banking on. There's a great Liz Pelly clip that I saw on Instagram where she was talking about some of the research she was doing for her book Mood Machine, and she talked about how engineers at Spotify, I mean, and this applies to all streamers, but she was specifically talking about Spotify, talked about how they were designing the user interface so that users did not have to do any work to find music that they wanted to listen to, that the algorithm would pop up on the homepage and take a good guess as to exactly what they want to listen to. And even I get caught in this loop myself. Like if I'm going for a short walk and I'm going to listen to music and I open my streaming app, which is YouTube Music, everybody's got one, I guess. Most people do at least. And the homepage of YouTube Music it's called Speed Dial, and it's like a 9-tiled grid of stuff that you probably want to listen to.
Is it based on your past listening habits?
So I'll give you an example.
But is it like stuff you've been listening to, or is it like
stuff I've been listening to?
New suggestions?
No, it's stuff I've been listening to.
I think that's the thing that not separates Spotify. Not that Apple Music isn't doing this or the other ones aren't doing this. And I use Apple Music, so that's strictly where my experience is, but I know what goes on Spotify a little bit. But like it's suggesting new music to you as well. And I think part of what makes Spotify seem much more evil in the past, few months, few years is they are pushing their own preferred content.
Well, it's stuff
over your taste.
Yes, in many cases,
or in a way that masquerades as your taste.
And this is a huge reason why people need to leave Spotify if they haven't already. Is like they're creating AI music based on artists that are popular, and then pushing those artists that they have the 100% rights to in the algorithm, so they don't have to like pay out artists.
Right.
The way that they share revenue on the platform is it's like artists get paid a percentage of the total streams. Can you believe that there's a bug inside of Tyler's apartment, guys?
Me? Inside of my apartment? Forget it.
So that's part one. Yeah. I guess that's actually part B.
That's part B, I was going to say.
Part B.
Yeah.
And I called it A and B. I don't know why.
Not to give, hierarchy. There's no hierarchy
to separate it from, we might split this episode into 2 parts, so it's going to be episode 0, part 1 and 2. You never know.
I think, though, what we were kind of talking about this earlier, I think what makes part A very interesting, right, is, and you can go in, I think, to what part A means for you, is that we're talking to people who, in a specific context, which for us is New York City and its adjacent partners, Frank was from North Carolina. That's, obviously not New York. But the people that we know who operate within this kind of little microcosm of the larger music industry have expertise in certain things that the listener may or may not know that applies to the general analysis that's going on.
Yes, how the industry
in the discourse
works.
And the B section of the
Right.
And everyone has their own perspective and their own little, they see a sliver of something that is invisible to a lot of people, that is part of this kind of larger, I don't want to say problem, but this larger conversation that we're trying to have, right?
The guests that I'm having on the podcasts are going to use their personal experience in music, whether it be on the industry side, on the artist side, on the listener side. My friend Lewis is going to come on at some point, and we're going to talk about the state of criticism in general from the perspective of a music fan. The idea for all of these guests is to bring them on and to let them use, or for me to try to let their personal experience speak to one question or one aspect of the culture at large as it relates to music.
You use the term in the manifesto, ethnography.
Yes, a digital really ethnography. Yeah, because I think initially I was like, this kind of sounds like journalism, and then I was like, again, I don't have ethics. This is not journalism. Like I'm not protecting my sources. I'm not fact checking. I'm not doing the things that you're supposed to do as a journalist, and I'm fully cognizant of that.
Right. Well, there are other people doing that work.
There's other people doing that work, definitely. And I'm not saying that like every influencer is compromised or every journalist is compromised,
Yeah. Well, it's just one way.
Right. And I'm probably compromised in other ways because I'm a musician, and certainly I won't punch down, and certainly I won't punch sideways either. Not that that's ever really necessary. But
right.
you know, if I truly felt like I wanted to burn bridges with everyone in music, maybe there's things that I would say that I wouldn't say otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe I am still compromised. But that kind of gets into the Noam Chomsky thing.
Yeah.
Which maybe we should talk about.
We should talk about that. I mean, I think, do you want to outline his 5 kind of filters?
Yes,
I think and I think a good exercise for the listener as you're reciting these. And I had this experience when I read, because I mean, I'm familiar, of course, with the book, and I'm familiar with the ideas behind it, with Chomsky's ideas, but like I haven't actually read the book. So when you bring up his 5 filters that he talks about when it comes to kind of media bias, right? And when I was reading your manifesto, where you kind of described them very briefly, almost instantaneously, I was able to identify part of my knowledge of music, the music industry, almost immediately to every single filter. And I think a good exercise for the listener as you're listening to this is see how quickly things come to mind for you.
Yeah.
And I think it brings out into the open, I think, a lot of how I think the word is obvious.
Yeah.
A lot of the problems are that we have been dealing with as music fans.
Yes. I think that there is a general sense within the people who know that the music industry is completely fucked.
Right.
But I think that maybe amongst the general population, that doesn't seem as transparent.
Right.
I mean, people can interface with it from like, it seems as though Ticketmaster has a monopoly. It seems as though streaming doesn't pay artists.
Yeah.
And these are all true.
Right.
But unfortunately, this is actually a surface level problem, which kind of infects all the other parts of the industry. I think it would be a great exercise for us to, I mean to like buy a whiteboard, and I want to draw a pyramid to explain each layer of the music industry as a literally in the form of a pyramid scheme with artists at the bottom.
Right.
We're doing Marxist analysis here, folks. Like, I don't want to pull punches. Like, we are critical of capitalism here.
Right.
For good reason. And I hope that through the episodes we can discuss all the aspects of why. But maybe now let's talk about Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
So, Noam Chomsky's 1988 book, Manufacturing Consent, exposes the multi-layered corruption of privately owned news media under capitalism, not through conspiracy, but rather through the structure of capitalism, self-selecting winners who ruthlessly do business by market logic. This corruption is achieved through 5 filters, as Chomsky refers to them. It is my basic contention that this corruption of news media also applies to the music industry. This podcast will serve as a meta-level argument in favor of building alternative networks and pathways, and will also explore each Chomsky filter and how they apply to the music industry. So think about this at home as I'm reading them. Ownership. Mass media firms are big corporations. Often, they are part of even bigger conglomerates. Their end game, profit. And so, it's in their interest to push for whatever guarantees that profit. Naturally, critical journalism must take second place to the needs and interests of the corporation. 2, advertising. Media costs a lot more than consumers will ever pay. So, who fills the gap? Advertisers. And what are the advertisers paying for? Audiences. And so it isn't so much that the media are selling you a product, their output. They are also selling advertisers a product, you. Obviously also applies to social media, but...
Right. Well, I think the advertising thing is a really interesting one because it's obviously there's no advertising yet in a song, but yet.
Well, when you go to a rock show...
That's what I was going to say. It's in everything else.
What are they selling? Alcohol.
They're selling...
They're selling, and you're selling merch, and it's all of these tertiary things.
Every music festival is sponsored by a company.
Right. And
it's filled with vendors.
Yeah, and I mean, celebrities do commercials in order to make money.
How many Coachella influencer ads have you seen? They're like, I went to the T-Mobile tent at Coachella, and it's like,
sure,
huh?
Some concert tickets are astronomical in price.
Right.
But you listen to the album basically for free.
Right.
Most people who listen to music use a streaming service, even if they aren't subscribed and they're literally getting ads. Like, the actual output of the music industry has essentially been rendered worthless.
Right.
And yet that is the thing that so much money and so much energy and so much creative work, and people need to get paid for all of that. And guess who doesn't?
The musicians. Talk about the bottom of the pyramid.
Talk about the bottom of the pyramid, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to
that. The third filter is the elite, which I'm referring to as bias. Journalism cannot be a check on power because the very system encourages complicity. Governments, corporations, big institutions know how to play the media game. They know how to influence the news narrative. They feed media scoops, official accounts, interviews with the experts. They make themselves crucial to the process of journalism. So those in power and those who report on them are in bed with each other. 4 is flack. Let's say you challenge power. You'll be pushed to the margins. When the media, journalists, whistleblowers, sources, stray away from the consensus, they get flack. When the story is inconvenient...
That's where that siren.
Yeah, that's where the siren.
Conveniently placed siren.
I'm getting flack. I'm leaving the sin.
As you start outlining the kind of the dark underbelly, the feds are coming for you.
The feds... I almost wore my CIA shirt.
That would have been funny.
We played a gig in Portland and there was a CIA, I Heart CIA with like a target over the heart shirt just sitting on a chair at the venue. And we were like packing up for the night and no one, it was like, whose shirt is this? And I was like, guys, I got it. And I almost wore it today. That's fucking awesome, dude. CIA Asset Podcast. But I decided to wear this instead because I thought it made my tits look better.
Fair.
Which is like actually the point of this podcast.
That's kind of been Jesus Christ. It's going to be the running bit. But it'd be funny if that logo for the podcast was like you just took from the t-shirt the I
Heart CIA.
Yeah, that could be very funny.
Yeah, I should.
Actually.
Okay.
Wait. I'm just going to double check, make sure we're good. Okay, cool.
Okay. So when the media and those who work in it stray from the consensus, they get flack. When the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you see the flack machine in action, discrediting sources, trashing stories, and diverting the conversation. I would love to go over like media examples of these also.
I think that's the hardest one to pin down.
Flack?
Flack in the music world.
People who do DIY. People who are operating. I guess we're doing this early on. This is like a larger point, but like indie labels, indie music landscape realistically is owned by major labels. It is just one flavor of what they're doing. Like, and I mean this with love, and maybe I'll cut this, maybe I won't. You Bet, which is my band, is signed to Hardly Art, which is a subsidiary of Sub Pop, which is a subsidiary of Warner Music Group. And so we're small fries in the grand scheme of things, you know, but Sub Pop, there's some big indie artists on Sub Pop there, and they've been around for a while, and they make money, you know, and we think of Sub Pop as this indie label, but it's like, it's owned by one. You can't.
So I guess that's why you'll never see like an artist who's on Sub Pop kind of pulling their music off of Spotify and broadcast.
Right. It's like, you just can't. You can't.
You just can't do it.
Right. If you're gonna play that game, like you realistically, if you want to make a living from your art, if you want to like play the game, your music is on streaming.
Right.
Unless you're literally a major artist. But we saw artists who protested that for a while eventually gave in. Radiohead, the Beatles, Taylor Swift. Like,
there are artists who did pull their stuff from the platform.
Smaller artists,
independent.
And guess what? That's amazing. Like Deerhoof took their stuff off Spotify. And like
King Gizzard took their stuff off Spotify.
Some bands are like big enough or like DIY legends enough that they're like, hey, I don't actually need this.
Right.
But for other bands who are like trying to break through to a certain level, it's basically impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's basically impossible.
Absolutely.
I mean, unless if you're doing this for like your principles and not to like ever be able to make a living from this, do what you want.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of, you don't see, I mean, maybe we can cut this part out, but I don't think I've heard a person who's serious about music and music business make an argument as to why you should not put your music on streaming. Like a compelling argument to that.
No, I mean, there's like a very strong ethical, moral one. I think.
No, of course,
but like an artistic one.
It's always like everyone acknowledges that, but you still have to do it.
Well, I'm thinking of one strong example in the past couple of years of an album that did really well despite not being on Spotify, and that's Cindy Lee's Diamond Jubilee.
Okay.
Cindy Lee, like, obviously used to be in the band Women, which was like indie darling, went on to make Cindy Lee, was kind of underground for a while, made Diamond Jubilee, got a really good Pitchfork review, sold out the tour, had a mental breakdown. Shit wasn't on Spotify. It was on Bandcamp and like YouTube. And like someone sent me the files pretty early on, and I was like, this is cool. We're like file sharing again. Like it felt like this moment. Obviously it I guess people still listen to it. It's a good album. It's very long. There's some good tracks on it. But then like after that canceled tour and the album had a little bit of time to kind of percolate, all of a sudden Cindy Lee's doing like 2 or 3 nights at the Brooklyn Paramount playing solo.
Wow.
Like that's a big moment for that artist. But that is a fluke, right? That is like an exception to the rule.
Right.
And I think anyone who thinks about what streaming is and like the current landscape of music will understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We exist in a very unique and insane landscape.
I wanted to just to recap the fifth filter, right? Common enemy.
Yeah.
You got on. I kind of interrupted you. You were kind of going on about. You were not going on, but you were about to bring up how a lot of people pay lip service to left wing ideas.
Yeah.
And maybe you should just expand on that a little bit more about what you mean by that.
I'll give you an example.
And how that applies to the filter.
I will give you a really good example.
Yeah.
Mannequin Pussy is an amazing band from Philadelphia. And they were in the DIY trenches for years. And I have a lot of respect for them. And they made a really good album. Their last album was really good. They kind of do ostensibly left-wing like PSAs mid-shows about how they are political and how they think that people who say that they shouldn't be should shut the fuck up. And they do a good job. They're outspoken about many of the insane political issues that are affecting 2026 world. Yeah. And then they were made the face of Spotify women in punk. And it generated a lot of discourse because they posted online like, hey, we're so excited to receive this honor. We want to use this opportunity to generate a conversation with Spotify about some of the injustices. Of course, Spotify is a platform that's like running ICE ads.
Right.
And like creating AI copies
using
of existing
data
artists.
Dumps to create like war machines.
No, exactly. Spotify is like it's a tech company masquerading as a music company, and
it's an advertising company, right?
It's an advertising tech, almost like military tech company.
They started out as an advertising company. They didn't even start. This is like Spotify 101.
Like if I were in their position, it's complicated because like receiving that kind of recognition, especially like pushing you onto normies, can be a financial game changer for the rest of your life.
Totally.
And as an artist and someone who's in the trenches and has been doing this, and they have been doing this for a long time, I can imagine the strong urge to get the bag, right?
Of course,
But of course they kind of accepted this honor with a caveat. They're on like Times Square billboards advertising Spotify, and a lot of people got really upset with them and felt as though they were betraying their left-wing ideas or their left-wing presentation in doing this.
'Cause that means a lot to people.
Of course it does. Well, that's what separates indie music from non-indie music, or so people think.
Right. I mean, so the whole punk ethos could be summed up.
But at this point, indie is completely compromised. Like,
of course.
You should not be looking for your ethical compass from an indie band, respectfully. And people who make art and want to do it for a living and who need to interface with these systems are compromised. It is a compromising place to be. I am compromised.
Streaming is a natural result of the pursuit of capital and the pursuit of profit.
Yes.
And to achieve more profit,
Chomsky.
You need to trim down as many kind of losses as possible. And streaming, it's a digital product that you rent essentially. And someone figured out, they did the math and they decided, you know what? If we remove the physical aspect and have people rent access to the product, and this was like 10 years ago now at this point.
And now of course you see it everywhere.
We're
the
seeing it everywhere.
subscription model is everywhere.
Right.
PlayStation just announced that they're discontinuing physical releases.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It's like every single company which can distribute digitally is gunning towards that because then they can sell you a license that they can revoke at any time.
Exactly.
Like, PlayStation made that announcement that they were discontinuing physical releases the same week that they removed movies that people had bought through their service, like to own. Like, you know how when you like are on your smart TV or whatever and you can like buy or rent? I always click rent because I know that buying it for more money means that if they lose the rights, it's gone from my library as well.
Right.
And so that like they removed movies from people's libraries the same week they discontinued physical releases. Did you read Liz Pelly's book, by the way?
I actually haven't read
it.
But okay.
Wait, I want to jump into that really quick just to piggyback off of the point about subscription models and streaming. she makes a really good point outlining the history here. It's not a coincidence that Spotify started in Sweden. Because Sweden was seen by labels as a lost market because of how prevalent piracy was. Like they saw 50% of the music market in Sweden as being lost to piracy.
Wasn't Pirate Bay coded by like a Swedish guy?
It might have been. She might have mentioned it in the book, but I forget.
Yeah. And it was hosted in Sweden
and so it's not a coincidence that a Swedish tech company basically made this appeal to labels and said, just sell us the rights to your catalog so you can make something off of this essentially lost market.
Right.
And labels agreed. But again, and this is such good obfuscation, which maybe plays into the common enemy filter, is record labels and tech companies want us to think that it was because of consumer practices that we ended up with streaming.
Right.
But of course, actually, it was just labels selling out artists and saying, well, we're going to get our bag no matter what.
Right.
And the losses are going to come from somewhere.
Right.
And the record industry was in free fall at this point comparatively to like before digital distribution. Right before digital distribution, like there was like billions of dollars circulating from CD sales. Right. I forget the exact numbers. They're in Liz Pelly's amazing book, Mood Machine, if you haven't read it. But it made, like the book did make me want to kill myself. It actively made me want to kill myself because of how bleak the picture was. And I know that by the end she tries to reconstitute some hope. My goal with the podcast is to reconstitute hope by actually talking about art itself and like as like a panacea to all the bullshit that's surrounding it. Just because there's all this bullshit doesn't mean there isn't worthwhile art being made. Totally. And so that's the 1-2 punch of the podcast. Now that we've gone down into the depths of hell of the industry, it's like, damn, actually there are albums that are deeply inspiring and beautiful and new that are being made that are getting ignored or being overlooked, or, you know, I want the general consumer, right? If we think about the target audience, there's the enthusiasts, there's the fans, and then there's like the normies. And the normies might be lost. I don't think that I can ever personally reach them. I don't think this podcast is going to be like big or anything. Right. I hope I can reach music fans and show them like, hey, I know you really like 70s punk and 80s punk, and like those bands are really cool, and I know you listen to them a lot, but there's actually bands in 2026 that are making music that you would really like, and you're just not getting exposed to it. And I want you to feel empowered to go out and find it and go to shows and like find their influences. I saw this great band Cohort B a few months ago, and they blew my mind. And I was talking to them after, and it was like they were a punk band, but I heard Model Actress and Swans and all of this really heavy kind of dance music and no wave going on in there, and it was so brutal and so inspiring. And I thought, God, I was thinking of a few friends who are caught in this cycle of listening to music they already know. There are so many good bands out there right now that aren't just retreading what has been tread, who are actually making something worthwhile. And I want to help people feel empowered to go out and find that stuff.
This podcast in many ways was influenced by your like DMs that you had with people, right?
Yeah.
And I think like, I guess one, how did those experiences you had in the DMs, so to speak, influence this podcast and the format?
Sure.
But also, what about those DMs did you learn about what kind of conversations people are interested in, right? Because I think like you get a lot of responses. I mean, you have, I don't know how many followers you have, 1,000?
Like 3,700.
Right? I think the response that you get and the amount of conversation you have is kind of outside of the like standard deviation of like what would be normal. And I think it's because you ask provocative questions that are intentionally provocative, right? But I think people are also kind of yearning for this, right? So like, what do you think people want?
I think people are generally intellectually understimulated. When you do a PhD, what you are expected to do is to, and I'm going to do a visualization for our audience. Imagine the bounty of the world's knowledge is a circle, okay? Maybe all the knowledge is a circle. Maybe there are concentric circles for each topic of or field of study. What you are doing when you do a PhD is you are expanding the boundary of that circle of human knowledge. You are connecting things that haven't been connected. You are doing research. You are trying to generate knowledge that is new. not every PhD does this, but it's like through research and rigorous study and writing and reading, you need to have a thorough understanding of the landscape in order to actually push things forward.
Right. That's why you don't just start writing a PhD when you're 18.
You don't just start writing a PhD. You have to study for years, and you need to read hundreds of books. My approach to art making is like that.
You see yourself as a PhD student?
I see myself as a project manager who is like trying to approach art making from like a somewhat intellectual standpoint. I'm a pseudo-intellectual, like let's be real, because like I haven't done my reading, but I have done a lot of listening. For me, the most exciting art is stuff that is pushing the boundaries of what people are able to create. Because once the boundaries have been pushed, like in many cases through art that you might consider experimental or to have experimental aspects, that creates space for then popular artists to move into there and to push our understanding and our collective enjoyment and creativity, right? Like people talk about the Velvet Underground, where it's like not a lot of people at the time listened to the Velvet Underground, but everyone who did started a band.
Right.
Like that's what I mean when I talk about influence. And for me, influential works of music warrant careful consideration, analysis, discussion. What worked about it? What did they influence? What did they pioneer? These are really interesting and provocative questions to me. It's less interesting for me to say, well, this is a band that is a product of things of those pioneers. Let's talk about that. It's interesting. You can say, oh, well, I hear this influence and this influence. Great.
And then it kind of stops there.
It's like, well, are they doing anything new?
Right. Well, you can kind of get into conversations about like the artist themselves, who they are, their unique perspective.
Yeah, and also like why
how it
audience
transforms the material. I mean,
why audiences respond to it.
Yeah,
and why maybe in a way that they didn't necessarily respond to the pioneers.
Right.
It's complicated. I mean, I think listening habits are like a whole separate topic that we can get into that I want to get into because I often talk about this, about how so many problems in the media landscape could be solved with better arts education and just more funding.
Right.
But of course these things have been systematically defunded.
Right.
Is it really a mystery? Right. Like they, for lack of a better term, don't really want you to challenge existing pedagogies of art consumption. Right. They want you to accept things as they are and be, profit cows, cash cow. I don't know. They're milking us.
Cash cows. Yeah, they want you to be a cash cow, right? I mean,
I'm not under any grand illusion that what I'm doing here is expanding the circle, because I don't think that this is.
Well, it seems to me. I mean, we did one episode with Frank, right? But it felt to me like you're doing research, right? You're not making any conclusions, necessarily. But
not yet.
having these people on who have specific expertise, right? Who can speak to certain things that you or I don't have the knowledge of. Well, you are doing research, right?
This is why I describe it as ethnography.
Right.
I want people to feel inspired.
Right.
I
mean, I walked away from the Frank interview. I wasn't on camera for that one. Obviously, I was sitting off to the side, but I walked away from that thinking I got to listen to this band and this band, right? Because he knows a lot about artists that I don't know about. Right? You ask good questions, right? And I think you listen.
Oh, do I?
You do listen.
I tend to think of myself as not a good listener, but I'm working on it.
No, I think the episode with Frank, they'll see that.
Well, Frank was a great talker, and he was so interesting, and the questions really fed themselves. Like,
So
it's going to be different depending on the guest.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different.
Like, I don't know. I think this is like something I did want to touch on is just like how we are kind of improvising what this is. As much as we have a strong idea of what we want it to be, I think that many aspects of it are still up in the air. I'm going to edit it myself. I don't have experience doing that.
Right.
Maybe I'm going to have a list of, maybe it's going to take an Adam Friedland turn and I'm going to have a list of inflammatory questions at the end. Like I'm already planning some kind of meme episodes. Like I'm going to have Nick from You Bet on and feed him a bunch of acid and ask him what the worst song he ever wrote was, and turn it into an Eric Andre episode. I have no idea what the future holds for this.
Many are saying we're doing a meme episode right now.
This is not a meme episode,
no,
Tyler.
I don't think it is.
This is a serious introductory episode.
I will say I thought at first, I was like, oh, we're just going to be bantering and it's going to be like funny. But we're actually having a really interesting conversation.
I thought this podcast would have me playing somewhat of like a provocateur type character, trying to like trap my guests into saying something mean about something. I don't know. I didn't know what I thought. But
sometimes people say mean things. You don't even have to push them that far.
I say mean stuff.
You do say mean stuff. I say mean stuff. I'm trying not to, but I say mean stuff.
I posted on my story today that the song "The Girl Is Mine," Michael Jackson featuring Paul McCartney could have been an email.
I got a couple responses. It
got a couple responses.
Well, bringing it back to that, right? Bringing it back to DMs. My second question I wanted to ask you about your podcast in general is, what do you envision? And I think maybe you already answered this, but like, what do you envision that the person who's listening who doesn't live in New York, doesn't know any of the bands that you're mentioning, any of the artists, maybe, obviously they're going to know Michael Jackson, right? But like, when you talk about, we're talking about UBET or talking about, local musicians here, right? The person who doesn't know anything about that, what can they get out of the discussion?
I hope that I'm providing enough context, and maybe I'll need to do some voiceovers when context is lacking in the organic conversation about like what some of these bands are or what they sound like. Maybe I'll be able to get the rights to the music, or like I have a live clip on my phone that I can throw in because I've seen the band,
Right. I'll get one of the stream decks eventually.
Like edit it into the show. I want to like turn people on to certain artists, but what I really want is for people to think about the process of creation that went into what they hear, no matter where they're from, right? Like, well, this band was clearly influenced by A, B, and C bands. And so if you like that, and not just like recommendations, but just like there is actually a cultural legacy for everything that is ever made. I think I'm realistic in that it will be really hard for me to reach normies because a lot of the conversation is certainly going to be inside baseball. Yeah. But I want to provide enough context that if a normie somehow stumbles upon this, they have a fighting chance of engaging with it in a serious way, or feeling interested in engaging with it in a serious way. But also, like, if you make things too accessible to normies, you alienate the enthusiast base. And the enthusiast base is obviously much smaller than the normie base. But like realistically, the music fan, which I consider to be in between enthusiast and normie, is like my actual target audience here. Yeah. I think enthusiasts probably know a lot of this already anyways. Yeah. I hope that the enthusiasts are willing to generate discourse in comments on, I'm going to upload this on YouTube. I really hope that the DM structure can transform into comments and threads and replies, because I think that the community that follows me on Instagram actually is really smart and really knowledgeable. And I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of them on the podcast so they can have their little moment in the sun to like get all their hot takes out.
People are starved.
People are starved. Yeah. And like there are certain people when I hear from them, I don't think of them as reply guys. I'm just like, oh, thank God. Like this is a very intelligent, measured person who like does XYZ in music. And it's amazing to hear from them and go back and forth. And sometimes we really disagree. Right. Sometimes I think people are crazy. Yeah. Sometimes people think I'm crazy. Right. And that's exciting.
That's very interesting, right?
That's exciting.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. Like there's really not a lot of, there isn't a discussion forum out there really for the type of person that we're describing.
r/indieheads, and I hope that I'm able to, interview people and create interesting conversations. I hope that I'm able to research well enough that I can not miss obvious things. I think one idea that I had for this podcast before we even got started with it was that I had this idea in order to incorporate like the DM structure was I wanted people to call in and I wanted it to be like a live thing. We had a whole conversation. Tyler and I had a whole conversation about this back in the winter when we were talking about this, about like, oh yeah, I want it to be like a hotline thing where people can respond in real time and then I can contend with that, because I think that one thing I love about the DMs is that people can like correct me on something in real time and then I can in the moment be like, oh, I forgot about this. You're totally right. I'm not going to be able to do that in an edited podcast form. Yeah. I'm hoping that I can release these one at a time so that I don't like get too far behind on like what someone's pointing out as a huge mistake or blind spot of mine. Yeah. I want to do the rigor and I want to do the research and I want to provide people with something that they can actually interface with and not just like consume mindlessly. I'm trying to push back against the mindless consumption. Like my favorite YouTube videos are the ones that I can't watch in a second screen. You know what I mean? Like maybe this is ultimately going to be second screen content, but like I hope it's primary screen content. Yeah. That like Netflix is literally making movies which kind of restate major plot points again and again because they know that people are on their phones.
You can fucking smell it. You can tell when you're watching a movie. And this makes me turn movies off.
And don't you think that this is happening in music as well?
Well, I mean, what did Daniel Ek say? I think it's in The Moon Machine, right? It's like she quotes like an employee who quotes a Daniel Ek who says like, our competition is silence.
Yes. Our competition is not
Apple Music. It's not Amazon.
It's silence.
It's silence. Yeah.
Right. They want you to have something going on in the background at all times. And it's not a coincidence that like coffee shop chill Muzak playlists are so prolific. You know, and you kind of hear the same songs.
Lo-fi beats to chill and study to.
Right.
It's not lo-fi beats to listen to.
It's to chill and study to. But yeah, I'm just thinking about, you know, indie artists too feed into this.
Yeah.
Indie artists, of course, feed into this.
Everyone feeds it.
And people have hits that kind of toe the line between the Muzak and the artistic expression.
Right.
Thing.
I mean, think about all the songs that have become just simply sounds, trending audio. Like,
people are writing for that. I mean,
exactly.
Cynically, and Liz Pelly talks about this in the book. Literally, there are producers who will post various rendition or various iterations of a hook and see which one performs the best algorithmically, and then they make that one the actual chorus of the song.
Yeah. There is I think a brief story interjection, and maybe we should cut it off. Brief anecdote. This is like 2022. When I was working at Thump, this was before the studio was open. We were just slinging gear, like selling, flipping gear. There was this guy who bought $100,000 worth of microphones, which is a lot of money. Like, I don't think...
That's crazy.
That's more money than I have ever made in... Well, okay, that's not true.
Well,
but like,
what do you buy them for?
He bought them as a tax write-off to bring himself into a lower tax bracket. And so I was like, okay, well, what's this guy doing that he's like buying microphones? He had a studio. The LLC was like under his like artist name. And we looked him up, and his entire like money-making venture was he was essentially making spa music on Spotify. And I was like, so I had to listen to it. And the kicker for me was that each album, he had dozens of albums, and each album was like called like Serenity or like Riverside.
This is so Mood Machine.
Yes. And then the songs within the album would be named, the name of the album is called Riverside. This first song is Riverside, parentheses, spa. The second song is called Riverside, parentheses, relax. Riverside, parentheses, dinner, or I don't know, and like a fucking coffee shop, right? And then every single album followed the same formula. And if you go through and play the songs, it's like just different enough. I mean, this is like pianos, some synths. You or I could cook this shit up in like 5 minutes, right? And each song was just different enough from the other one, lengthwise and in terms of the like evolution of it, to qualify as a different song. And this guy was making enough money off of doing that
to buy $100,000
that he was buying $100,000 microphones as tax write-offs.
Yeah.
And that's the type of person, that's what's right. Like, I think that to me, that story, this guy.
Well, it's not art, right? It's like industrial line production. It's like culture industry Adorno.
It is the perfect summation of Spotify. And what streaming, the true purpose of it is, right?
It's functional music in a bad way. And Liz Pelly actually talks about this in the book, and I really hope you do, and I hope everyone listening reads it.
Literally mood music.
She differentiates between like ambient and like music for airports as being like a pioneering album, as like a functional kind of music, like for a space to like in order to like perform a function, versus like the kind of like Muzak algorithm slop that we're getting today. I won't get into exactly how she breaks it down, but there's just like a different intentionality there, essentially, that actually does make a huge difference. Like, these things actually matter in art.
Totally.
These things actually matter in the end product. Like, what you are listening to at the end of the day, like how it was made, what the goal was in creating it, it all matters. And I hope that we don't forget that, and I hope we can explore that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll wrap it up now.
I think we could have wrapped it up before I told that story. Even
I mean, it's, maybe we'll
figure it out when you edit it.
I'm just gonna say, this is the end of episode 0 of whatever we're gonna call this podcast. I really appreciate you listening. If you listened all this way, I hope that I can deliver on my own expectations and whatever expectations, if you have expectations for this podcast. I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. I think we're going to get there. Couldn't do it without you, Tyler.
Happy to help.
Really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for coming to my house.
I switched to my NPR voice for the outro. The whole episode, I'm like, hey. And then I'm like, well, everyone. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming. Be safe. Fuck the police. Goodbye.
Real shit.
Real shit.
All right.